Hello, podcast listeners. You are now listening to the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast. I'm your host, Jordan River, and I want to thank you for tuning in today. Before we get started, please share the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast with a friend, with a peer, with a colleague. We appreciate you spreading the show. And also make sure you're subscribed. Give us a good rating and review. It really helps the show more than you might think. We've got resident coffee expert, Dr. Coffee, back on the line. What's up, Dr. Coffee?
Hey, it's another day above ground drinking coffee, my friend.
Absolutely. I got my hot cup right here. I'm ready to dive into today's topic. We've been waiting to do this episode for a while because I know you're really well versed on the subject, Dr. Coffee, as oxymoronic as that may seem. Today's subject is sleep. That's right, the incredibly important health aspect of sleep, and I feel so heavily overlooked. Do you think, let's start there, Dr. Steve, do you think that's a fair statement? I feel like no one pays attention to their sleep as much as they should.
I agree. We're not paying enough attention to sleep. We use sleep as something we eventually have to do at night. Most people don't realize that it's a third of our life, so sleep is important.
Yeah.
And as the Dalai Lama said, sleep is the best meditation. So we want to make sure we understand the importance of sleep.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when it comes to our health, especially, and there's a great term popping up called sleep hygiene, right? And we're going to get into all these different things that you can do to care for your sleep, to improve your sleep. And I'm really excited to see that this is taking off with some health professionals like Dr. Bruce and such as yourself, Dr. Coffee, talking about this stuff, bringing attention to it. Why don't we start with the biological importance when it comes to our health for sleep? Talk to me about how important it is that we get those, whatever 8 hours if you need it, however many hours you need. How important is that sleep?
It's very important. We have 24 hours in a day, and sleep is as important as what we eat and how much exercise we get. It's a third of our life, and we want to make sure that we're getting adequate quality sleep so that we can recharge our nervous system and help fight diseases.
Yeah, what stuns me is the link between disease development and lack of sleep. They're taking a look at things like dementia and Alzheimer's and how sleep plays into that. Does that line up with you, Dr. Steve? I mean, a lifetime of abused sleep, it's got to be similar to a lifetime of abused diet or inactivity, I'd imagine.
So you're not saying it's serious enough. Cancer has been linked to inadequate amounts of sleep.
Jeez.
And there is a higher rate of cancer in people who have disrupted sleep, like they work shifts.
Whoa.
And on top of all that, we know that sleep apnea, where you start and stop all night long, is a death sentence. It will lead to a heart attack.
Wow. And I know a ton of people are afflicted with that because of the, as you put it, the diabesity problem, the problem that we have especially in the States with this overweight obesity issue. It has something to do with the size of your throat, does it not? Can you explain that, Dr. Steve?
Sure. So, sleep requires you to breathe, and when you lay down, your muscles relax, and the opening for your throat can close down, especially if it gets to be anywhere bigger than 17-inch neck. Then people start having a collapse of their airway.
Wow.
And that leads to an apnea situation, and then all of a sudden the heart jump starts to try and force to open the airway. And so you're really jump-starting your heart all night long every time that you go from breathing to apnea to breathing to apnea.
Wow.
It's a horrible situation, and it absolutely is a death sentence. What's even worse about it is people don't get diagnosed. When was the last time you went into your primary care doctor for cold or flu or physical or blood pressure or whatever you're going there for. And they said, how's your sleep?
Right.
I mean, if you have high blood pressure, then one of the first things they should be looking at is how's your sleep. If you have diabetes, one of the first things they should be looking at is how's your sleep. But they don't, and it's really a death sentence.
That's so wild. And that would make sense because, you know, it's all about recovery when you're in that sleep period, right? What really fascinates me, Dr. Steve, is I listen to these podcasts about sports performance, and I'm really into mixed martial arts, and I love hearing about how these really, really high level mixed martial arts champions they optimize their health and fitness, and one of the things they do is they track their heart rate variability throughout the entire night, and if your heart, I'm sure you know this, but for the listener, if your heart rate is nice and even and there aren't these jumps and spikes, you get much, much better rest. So the athlete will wake up in the morning and turn to his trainer and say, how was my heart rate last night? And the trainer will either say it was not variable, it was very good, it was very consistent, let's train hard today, or he's going to say, you're going to take the day off because of how you slept last night and what your heart was doing in your sleep. Does that sound about right, Dr. Steve?
It does. You have it partially right. So heart rate variability is a pendulum. So if the heart rate variability is too wild, like there's an arrhythmia, then it presents a problem for training. On the other side of the pendulum, if the heart rate variability is too regimented, then it means that it sets up the nervous system so that somebody can walk up behind you, yell boo, your heart goes into an arrhythmia and you drop dead from sudden cardiac death.
Whoa, that's wild. So does that mean that they're never like dropping into that really relaxed state if it never really changes? Is that or no?
So it's a problem where you have too much regimentation
Okay.
in the heart rate variability, and it's a problem where you have too little regimentation. So both sides of the pendulum, I don't know if I just said that correctly, but
Yeah.
both sides of the pendulum where we don't want an arrhythmia and we also don't want somebody that has a regimented heart that being like a metronome, because then there's no variability.
It's too
if
sensitive.
The adrenals kick in.
Wow,
Exactly.
that is wild. That is so wild. I love talking about this stuff. Well, sleep's got to be hard for you though, Dr. Coffee, because you're like, we were just talking off air how you use coffee. You're bathing in coffee, or you're using coffee in your nettle pot. You drink coffee all the time. How do you sleep? How does caffeine play into sleep?
What we need to understand that there's something called caffeine clearance. And caffeine clearance is a test. It's a laboratory test that we can measure, which tells about liver function. And for those people who are very, very sensitive for caffeine, they may have a problem with liver function. So we don't clear caffeine properly. It hangs around. So usually caffeine takes between 20 and 35 minutes to kick in. The more caffeine you take, the less it matters when it kicks in. So there are people who become desensitized to caffeine. And then there are other people who their liver just doesn't clear caffeine and they stay very sensitive to caffeine. And so there was a very interesting study, and I use this study for myself personally. So I get a good night's sleep. I get up in the morning and I immediately have my coffee, my good old purity caffeinated coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't tried the darker roast, it's wonderful.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So I have that. And then I have my shots of espresso. Actually, I start off with a shot of espresso while I'm making my coffee. And then during the day, I drink my cold brew. And then I get ready for my coffee nap.
Coffee nap. I've heard about this.
So I think a coffee nap is like the best thing in the whole world. And here's why. There's a chemical in the brain called adenosine. Have you heard of that?
Sure. It's the first part of ATP.
There you go. So adenosine, when it's present, helps us sleep.
Hmm.
Caffeine, when it's present,
Doesn't.
doesn't. So when you feel tired, the adenosine is circulating through your body in high amounts,
Uh-huh.
and after you fall asleep, the adenosine levels start to drop. So if you have coffee, which competes with the adenosine receptors in the brain, so when you have your coffee and then you take your power nap before the caffeine kicks in, you get this half hour of the best space in the whole world.
No way.
And you wake up with much more energy because you're waking up into a caffeinated state after a power nap.
That's really
and there's
fascinating.
nothing like it.
So is that when people say a nappuccino or whatever? That's what they're talking about?
I think so.
Yeah. What, you're
but
not up on Instagram, Dr. Steve? No, sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't do Instagram or Facebook. But I call it my caffeinated transcendental meditation. So I have my coffee. I sit down for my meditation. I invariably nod off. I wake up into my meditation. I spend the next 20 minutes with my mantra. And then I open my eyes and I'm at a state that is high energy bliss.
Oh, that's a good description right there, man.
It's my most powerful 2 times during the day. To summarize it, if you drink about 2 cups of coffee before taking your half hour nappuccino, as you called it, it's probably the best benefits you'll get from a coffee nap.
I love that, man. Combining coffee and napping, two of my those are the Olympic sports that I hold gold medals in right there, man. I'm all about it. Here's what I want to dive into next, Dr. Coffee. I want to talk about things that harm sleep. I want to talk about what we can do to improve sleep. I want to talk about circadian rhythms, REM, all of it.
Okay.
So let's start with the different stages of sleep and how different factors can play into them. Does that sound good?
Sure.
So
that sounds great.
How would you explain the different stages or the different categories of sleep?
So sleep can be divided into 2 basic categories, what we call REM sleep and non-REM sleep. And REM stands for rapid eye movement. So when we lay down at night and we start to fall asleep, the non-REM sleep is what takes place. This is when you first start to fall asleep. It lasts approximately 5 to 15 minutes, and it makes up about 75% of your sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
So you're then going to pass through 3 phases till you reach the REM sleep. And REM sleep occurs around an hour and a half after you have first fallen asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then this cycle repeats itself all night long, the cycle of non-REM to REM to non-REM to REM. REM, as I said, is rapid eye movement sleep. The first phase, which is the non-REM sleep, is called N1 or stage 1 sleep. Your eyes are closed, you're starting to feel drowsy, your brain activity starts to slow down, and then you start to fall asleep. You may have a sensation of a muscle jerk, which can wake you up, and that's very normal because your muscle tone has not relaxed yet. This is not where you're going to fall into sleep apnea or snoring.
Okay.
This is where your bedmate rolls over and you wake up easily because you're really not too drowsy or disoriented.
Yeah,
or
you're drifting.
Deep in. Yeah, exactly. You're drifting into sleep.
Okay.
you're lying on your back in the pool, and the waves are kind of nudging you, and you're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
The second stage is N2 or stage 2, and your brain slows down. It'll occasionally have a burst of activity. Your body temperature is starting to fall. And if your bedmate wakes you up at this point, you know you've been sleeping.
Right. Okay. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So then we move into stage 3 and 4. And stage 3 is where your brain waves change. They change to what we call delta waves.
Mm-hmm.
Your body temperature decreases even more, and your breathing starts to slow. Your blood pressure decreases, and this is what we call a deep sleep.
Sure. Yeah, the deep sleep
It's
stage.
hard to wake somebody up during this, and if you do, they're going to feel groggy and disoriented, and it may take them a few minutes to feel alert.
Mm-hmm. And this is the first part where we begin to restore ourselves too, right?
Yeah, this is the restorative stage of sleep. It's where your body is starting to recover. It's where you're recharging your batteries. It's where fatigue starts to go away. And it's where you build up energy for your next day. So this is what you need to rebuild. And not only rebuild your mind and energy, but this is also where the whole nervous system starts to regulate the body so that it rebuilds bone and muscle, repairs tissue. This is your whole thing. And with coronavirus, this is the place where your immune system gets rebuilt.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, so many people are overworked and they're not sleeping and they're trashing their sleep and they're just perpetually sick. I wonder how much of the immune system crisis that I see around me, especially where I live, there's just so many sick people. It's like there's some people I know who are either always just getting over something or something's coming on. It's like they live their life like that. I wonder if it has to do with their sleep.
It absolutely does. Again, I called sleep apnea a death sentence. I'm letting you know that the absolute biggest change a person can make to their health if they're not a good sleeper is to get good sleep. Now, that requires a lot of things. It
Mm-hmm.
requires that you change the way you eat, because people that indulge in way too much sugar at night are not going to get enough sleep.
Mm-hmm.
People that are sensitive to caffeine, that don't give themselves a 3 to 6 hour window away from caffeine, are not going to get a good night's sleep. People that are not getting sunlight in the daytime and are then getting blue light at night, they're not going to get a good night's sleep.
Ugh, you just described
There's
me.
lots and lots of things that go into this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But you left off on deep sleep here, so we're recovering. Our muscles are repairing, our bones are repairing, and then do we move into REM sleep?
Yeah. So, and let me just say that the other thing is that there's this stuff that people are going to these complementary medicine doctors for, called growth hormone and testosterone.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's being built during this stage 4 sleep. This slow wave sleep is where your growth hormone and testosterone levels grow.
Oh, maybe they should be getting better sleep instead of rolling on testosterone deodorant.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to sound judgmental. That was really judgmental. I had to make the joke.
Your hormone balance in the body, especially growth hormone, is really dependent on getting good quality stage 3 and 4 sleep. And then you move into REM sleep, which is, again, rapid eye movement. And it's interesting. You go into REM sleep and your heart rate increases and your breathing increases. Your breathing sounds shallow and irregular. Your eyes move rapidly. They open and shut quickly, which is this rapid movement is why we call it REM sleep. And your muscle tone decreases. And there are people who feel like they're paralyzed. They'll have a dream. And I know most of your listeners that are listening in have had this happen to them
Right.
once in a while, where they're like in a dream and they're paralyzed. They want to move and they can't. Um, these things take place during REM sleep.
That's wild. I had a family member who struggled with that. He would have all these really wild experiences when he entered his REM sleep, like he was falling infinitely or like he was paralyzed. And he actually struggled with that for a while. So that's so fascinating. Would you say that this is when our brain is doing all of the great mysteries that it does, right? This is when we're dreaming. This is when it's reorganizing memories and thoughts and things. Is REM sleep more the brain doing its kind of defragmenting?
Yeah, and that's a good word, and that's the kind of what I was going to say, kind of example I was going to say is, every once in a while I'll clean the cache on my computer and I'll do a hard drive reset, whatever it's called, where you clean up, defrag the hard drive. Well, that's what you're doing when you're in REM sleep. And it's REM sleep changes so that the first time you go into REM sleep, it only lasts about 10 minutes. But it gets longer and longer as the night goes on. Again, you're going through these 60 to 90-minute cycles. And the REM sleep gets longer, and the brain is very active. It's going through major defragmentation during that time in a sequential manner.
Mm-hmm. It's wild stuff, man. It's so fascinating. I do feel it's kind of the final frontier, this neuroscience, dream work. It's interesting.
Yeah. And we all need sleep. Do you know how much sleep is required by the average person?
Yeah, definitely getting enough has got to be the number one thing. Why don't you give out the official recommendations, and then I'll tell you how much more I sleep than that.
Okay, well, I can tell you. According to Wilson Maziner, it's 5 more minutes.
5 more
amount
minutes.
Of sleep required by the average person. 5 more minutes.
I love that. Oh, that's a great quote. Totally.
So, normal sleep. So newborns will sleep, 14 to 17 hours. They need all that time. Young children should be getting 11 to 12 hours. Teenagers, 8 to 10. And this is really a big problem because, we keep making schools earlier and earlier. And there are kids that will not in a million years function at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning for school. I actually believe we should be starting schools at 9 o'clock. And
don't get me started, Dr. Steve. I do work at Lifebook, and it's a lot of personal development and education, and we find ourselves just getting very frustrated with the public education system here in America specifically, and hearing from you, a physician, saying, "Hey, some kids just aren't going to function at 6 a.m." Like, I don't know what it's going to take for the curriculum makers to open their eyes and make health and fitness and sleep and emotions and things like this more of a priority. Sorry for that little tangent there, but I totally agree with you, Dr. Steve, on that subject.
Yeah. I still haven't grown out of kindergarten where I laid down on the mat next to Sally and took a nap.
Totally, man. I feel like I'm still there too.
Yeah. And adults need between 7 and 9 hours. And in my book, The First Hour, I wrote, go to bed by 10, no excuses. And if you tell me you didn't go to bed by 10, I'll yell at you.
Classic tactic. But, that's exactly right. It's about making it a priority, right? It's about sticking to these things. It's about, I love this term, sleep hygiene, cleaning up your sleep, getting rid of the bad stuff, doing whatever you can to enhance it, just cleaning it up. Does that make sense?
It does. So, we have our required sleep, which is called basal sleep, and then you get this sleep debt. And if you haven't cleaned up your sleep act, then the sleep debt just keeps growing and growing. It's like a negative in your bank account.
Right.
And you get to a point where you really just can't catch up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a problem.
Big problem. Big problem. Well, we're bringing attention to it, and we're going to help people out. Let's talk about things to avoid and things to improve. why don't we start with things to avoid here? Obviously, intoxicants seems to play a big role if you're drinking alcohol. A lot of states with legal cannabis. I've done some interesting interviews talking about cannabis's benefits for deep sleep, but a lot of people don't know that THC actually disrupts your REM sleep. So people can kind of shoot themselves in the foot with that one. And then the other real indulgence, the other real addiction that I see destroying sleep is screens. Like you said, I mean, if your face is up against that blue light just a few moments before you go to bed, Dr. Coffee, that cannot be good for your sleep, right?
That's correct. So let's go through the list so we have an organized list in my head of what our podcast listeners should know. The first is caffeine. I love caffeine. Caffeine is wonderful, gets me going in the morning. But the cutoff time for most people with caffeine is 3 to 5 hours before they're going to go to bed.
Sure.
And caffeine is not just coffee. It's tea, it's cocoa, it's chocolate, it's certain medications. So pseudoephedra is a caffeine type product.
Oh, right.
That's right. So you don't want to take your Mucinex brand with the stimulant in it. You want to take the one that doesn't have the stimulant before bed. So caffeine about 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon is usually the last cutoff time for most people. Alcohol intake. Alcohol is a central nervous system depressant. It may cause you to feel sleepy, but it ruins your sleep quality.
100%.
So you don't enter that deeper REM sleep, which is what you need to restore your energy. And then on top of that, you still have the alcohol trying to get cleared by your caffeine, by your liver. And the alcohol is also affecting your brain function. Because if alcohol didn't affect the brain, then we could drink as much as we want and still drive.
What good would alcohol be if it didn't affect the brain?
Exactly.
No, 100%.
There you have it.
Yeah, so you got to cut that out as well.
Another thing that people do is that they have willy-nilly about what time they go to sleep. And that's why in my book, The First Hour, I say go to bed by 10 or I'll yell at you. Because you want to have a time, give or take 20 minutes every night, in which is the time you go to bed.
The routine actually improves the quality dramatically. I don't want to hear that, doctor. That's what really bothers me, because I have a mixed schedule where sometimes I'm playing, poker tournaments late. Other times I got to do a podcast with someone in Malaysia. So I hate to hear that, but it does make sense to me. If your body can count on the fact that it's going to go to bed at night and it's going to get up early in the morning, which is, by the way, how all plants operate on this planet naturally based on the cycles of the sun. They don't use their thinking brains. All of their information is actually stored in their genes, in their genetic makeup. And they act accordingly. They don't just decide to stay up all night and consume extra sugar from the soil or whatever it is. It would make sense to me that would be optimal for human health.
Sure. Setting the stage for sleep is important. So you want to reduce the temperature in your bedroom.
Oh, I love that.
You want to avoid hot showers or hot baths right before bed. You want to avoid exercising right before bed. It's too much of a stimulant.
Okay.
But I do have some good news that I'll say.
Yeah?
You can have sex before bed.
Oh, of course. Are there studies that show that helps sleep?
It does. It shows it helps sleep. And you can say, boy, that was the best 3 minutes of my life going
Exactly.
to sleep.
Exactly. No, that also makes perfect sense. A little bit of the mild exercise, and then I'm sure there's all sorts of hormonal changes that occur. And, that's what's really crazy, Dr. Steve, is we have all these other, negative impacts from all over our lives, right? Like we're surrounded by junk food. We're trying to avoid this or that. We've got microplastics in our water and all this stuff. The one area I feel like we can control and we can take back is our sleep. And I think that's why it's so important to get that rest and let our body recover and put time and effort into our sleep hygiene, you know?
Absolutely. So we're working on a book now called Unplugged from the Digital World. And one of the studies that we're really looking at is the blue light exposure. So let me try and just give a quick explanation of how important light is. You talked about all the plants
Mm-hmm.
in this world and how they respond to light.
Mm-hmm.
And they can tell when it's summer and light is more.
Mm-hmm.
They can tell when it's winter and light is left. I mean, they live by light cycles. Well,
Right.
so do we, but we're not acknowledging it. In the morning when you get up, and if you can sit outside in the sun and drink your first cup of coffee, that's going to set your hormone system up for the day to eventually lead to melatonin production at night.
Interesting.
No light in the morning, no melatonin at night.
Yeah, that makes
Of course,
sense.
where there's a pill, there's a way, and everybody thinks, "Oh, I can just take a pill." It doesn't work the same. Especially if then at night you're sitting in front of your technology, your screens on your computers, your screens on your TV, your screens on your cell phones are all giving out what's called blue light. And blue light stimulates the body to not produce melatonin, but to signal your brain it's time to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
So mixed messages. Think of you just laying down to go to sleep and your wife starts yelling you about a problem that's occurring and you spend the whole night thinking about it. Well, this is the same thing. The blue light is telling your brain, wake up. And so it doesn't work. So you have to shut down from technology to be able to get a good night's sleep. Now, if you have to look at technology, then buy yourself a pair of
correcting glasses. Sure. Yeah. There's even I know there's a couple good apps that shift the light on your screen. I'm sure the glasses would be better, but I use Flux, and I recommend people download Flux. I think it's a Mac app only. And that's the thing, Dr. Steve. It's about what we're doing. I think we start when it comes to sleep hygiene with what we're doing during the day. You just take a look at little kids, right? If you take them out to the park and let them run their energy out, they're going to have a vastly different evening than if you keep them cooped up all day. You got to get the highs going. You got to get that upwards roll on the roller coaster in order to come down at the end of the day properly. So it makes sense to me that you get the sun, you get the vitamin D, you get the caffeine early, you get on the way up, you peak and you go down. I mean, that's how we've operated historically. Never before have we forced ourselves to sit outside of sunlight inactive all day and then, stick us in a house with a little screen of blue light and say, okay, it's sleep time. Go. Now sleep.
Sure.
Of course it's not working. It makes sense to me.
Sure. They have these bulbs that I think Philips is one of the manufacturers of them, where you actually can change the color of the bulb through your smartphone.
Oh, that's cool.
And so at night, they're LED bulbs, and at night, if you change it more to the red frequency, that is the frequency that helps you sleep versus the blue light, which doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. So that's definitely the number one thing, what you're doing during the day, and then what you're avoiding, like we discussed, avoiding the alcohol late, avoiding screens late, avoiding eating anything too late, meals right before bed. I was talking with, I think it was Dr. Marvin Singh, says that even just having a full stomach and you're never giving your digestive system a rest can actually harm your sleep a little bit. So yeah, definitely cutting all that out. And then, like you said, the things we can improve, right? A cooler room. Do you recommend blocking out light? What do you think about light?
So you want to sleep in the dark room.
Mm-hmm.
You want to sleep in the cool room. You want to sleep so that you're comfortable. What do I mean by that? There are people that, they'll pick up their sheets and blankets and stuff for $9.99 a piece, and think that they can get a good sleep when it's all scratchy, etc. You want to invest in your bed. You're spending a third of your life in bed. You want to invest in it.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Maybe we can end. Do you have, like, if your patients are struggling with sleep or, bodily aches or whatever, do you have mattresses that you recommend that you would send your patients to?
So, right now the mattress industry is really a neat place to be at. All these mattresses in the box are coming out. It's been a few years now they're out. You've got Leesa, Leesa. You've got
Purple.
Ghost Bed. You've got Purple. I mean, each one of them has their own claim to fame. There are a couple of websites called like Sleep Sherpa and Sleepopolis that you can go on to and read on the different beds that are out there. And the nice thing about these is that you can order it. It gets delivered in a box. You open it up, you put it down, you let it air out, you sleep on it. And most of them will give you 90 nights. And if you're not happy with the bed, you call them up and say, I don't want it, pick it up.
Yeah, I'm glad that they're finally shaking up this industry. Tuft and Needle is my personal, it's a memory foam and it's really affordable. And I like it because, like you said, when you open it up and it goes to gas off, it's like it's much less offensive and supposedly non-toxic. So Tuft and Needle, I'm going to recommend out there for anyone looking to step up their sleep game.
Yeah, and Tuft and Needle is less expensive. I like the brand is great quality, and we bought them for our grandchildren because our grandchildren is young, and I thought the price point was perfect. We could do a whole session on beds because I've really made a habit of studying them because I have a lot of patients that ask me about beds.
Let's do sleep part 2. I'm sure there's so much more to talk about. We're coming up to it at the top of the hour here, though, so we got to run. Anything you want to say at the final out of this episode?
No, I really appreciate all your listeners and have a wonderful night's sleep tonight.
That's right, everyone. Have a good cup of coffee with this podcast and then have a wonderful, wonderful sleep at night. We appreciate you all listening and always sharing the show. We're doing great things here, as you can see, and I just can't thank you enough for being a loyal listener, everyone out there. All right, that's all for today. This is Dr. Coffee and Jordan River signing off, saying have an extraordinary day, everyone. We'll see you next time on the Coffee, Health, and Science Podcast.